High school sports. Coming up, as a matter of fact, this Saturday. Different training programs, everything from communications and journalism to app design, web design. In summers, we offer a math and coding class for 8th graders. And of course, film, photography, and broadcast. So we want to make sure that we engage our community every step of the way. And part of that is keeping our community closer to what we call the sphere of influence. Your vote matters. This vote matters. And when we're talking about voting, when we're talking about your neighborhood and your community, and this instance, we're talking about South Seattle and surrounding communities, that's what we're hyper-focused on, unashamedly. It's our diverse community that we represent. But I can guarantee you the things that impact and affect our community, impact and affect your community, or they will. Our candidates tonight are Sara Nelson and Nikkita Oliver. First, I want to introduce you to our moderators. Oh, see, I didn't memorize these bios, so I do radio, all right? I'm on television now, so. Our moderators are Mac McGregor, and Mac has been a world champion martial artist and has now coached 58 national champions and 29 junior Olympic champions. Mac is an educator and an activist. Mac is Seattle City Commissioner and sits on the LGBTQ Advisory Council for the Seattle Police Department. He's a director for social outreach, Seattle, a board member of Seattle Counseling Services, and is proud to be a voice for the transgender and gender non-conforming community. We thank Mac for being here. You'll see him a little bit later. And also Jermaine Miller, also known as the Deaf Chef. Chef Jermaine Miller is the owner of Soulful Dishes Restaurant on 18th and Yester, the Deaf Chef. Jermaine Miller has a long time been an advocate for food and social justice. And in response to the pandemic, Miller opened up his restaurant and kitchen to serve free meals and support Feed the Family, a community kitchen which utilizes donated skills, time, donated food items from local restaurants, and prepares to feed anybody who needs a meal. Okay, we went over the rules earlier, so our candidates are familiar with the rules. The moderators are ready with their question. And at this time, we'll have opening statements. And Ms. Nikkita Oliver will go first. And we're on.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Nikkita Oliver. I use they, them pronouns. I am a renter in the Rainier Beach neighborhood and a worker in Seattle's Central District. I have served for many years as an educator, attorney, frontline service provider, and I have seen firsthand how the policies handed down by the Seattle City Council do and do not unfold in terms of changing the material conditions of our most vulnerable and marginalized residents. I have actively supported families in navigating the housing crisis and homelessness, supported tenants in fighting evictions, and handled employment discrimination cases. I've worked alongside our Office of Civil Rights, our Human Services Department, and many others within the City of Seattle and within the City of Seattle offices to ensure that the policies are really meeting the needs of our communities. I am committed to building green, social, affordable housing for our workers and for our lowest income residents, for addressing exclusionary zoning and redlining, and having density that helps us address our climate catastrophe so we can meet our climate goals, and transportation for all. I am endorsed by our region's greatest climate organizations, by King County Councilmember Girmay Zahalai, the MLK Labor Council, as well as current City Council members Teresa Mosqueda and Tammy Morales. I am excited for this opportunity to speak with you about our policy and our goals, and look forward to serving you as your Seattle City Council citywide District 9 representative.
You have 43 seconds left, Nikkita.
Would you like me to? I'm happy to continue. It is so hard when you can't watch the clock yourself. Our biggest priorities for the Nikkita for 9 campaign is really addressing housing, specifically green, social, deeply affordable housing, addressing our regressive tax system that is being built on the backs of our lowest income workers, and ensuring that we move into progressive revenue generation that's not simply good for addressing this crisis, but is also important for building a budget that can survive through crises like the one we're in and this recession, ensuring that we can always meet the basic needs of our residents, and building a public safety system that is built through public health policies that see our young people and our communities as people to invest in rather than incarcerate.
And just so we could be fair on the time, it took about 10 seconds before me to get the clock started. So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds, Sara, as well, before I start the 2-minute clock. And then I'll just warn both of you, because I know the conversation can get caught up in it. At 10 seconds, I'll probably say 10 seconds, just so that you know where you're at. I don't want to confuse your train of thought, but for both of you, when it gets to 10 seconds, I might say 10 seconds, just to let you know. So you're going to be on the clock in about 10 seconds, but right now you can go. Opening statement.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to converge. To everyone who's made this event possible, I look forward to talking to the community and introducing myself a little bit tonight. I am a lifelong Democrat. I'm a mom of 2 kids, 2 teenage boys, and I moved to Seattle in 1990 to get a PhD in anthropology. Ended up bailing on academia to work in public service, and spent 10 years there passing legislation on affordable housing and transit and climate protections. And I know how good policy is made by bringing people together, paying attention to details and listening. And I'm also a small business owner. My husband and I started Fremont Brewing in 2009. And I got to admit, I've taken some heat for being the small business owner, in this race. But I think that's important, because small businesses are the job creators and the nodes of our communities, and they're really struggling right now. And I believe that access to opportunity to build generational wealth is key to transformational change. That means jobs, job training, foreclosure prevention, access to capital, and just help navigating the maze of bureaucracy. And I can do that because I've got that lived experience starting a small business and helping others. So I am running to bring my experience to bear on just helping get over the failed policies that have gotten Seattle into this place, homelessness, gun violence, displacement, and just get us on a track for a better future. So I am looking forward to the conversation today, and thank you very much for tuning in and caring about this election.
You still have 20 seconds.
I'm
wanna forfeit your
endorsed,
time?
sure. I'm endorsed by the unions that have built this city, the ironworkers, plumbers and pipe fitters, electricians, Local 46 and 77, the machinists, and the Building and Construction Trades Council. And why do they endorse the small business owners? Because we're aligned on the goals of a strong economy and good jobs.
All right, now you know who the candidates are. If you follow Rainier Avenue Radio, you know what's up next. You know how we get down. Bringing you Mr. Mac McGregor. Mac, you'll be asking the first question for both candidates, and you would direct that question initially to candidate Oliver.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. I am currently the co-chair of Seattle Renters Commission. So I have a question about rent. We have an antiquated law in the state of Washington that bans any city or county from implementing rent control. I want to ask each of the candidates how they feel about the city of Seattle pushing the state to change the antiquated law around rent control. The recent census said there are more renters in Seattle than there are homeowners. So this is an important issue for all in Seattle.
Candidate Oliver, you get the question first. You have 2 minutes. You're on the clock.
Well, thank you so much for this question, Matt. I think that rent control is absolutely something we need to be pursuing at the state level and lobbying to see the state change this particular state law to ensure that we can have a suite of options to address the crises that renters are facing. We know that nearly 60,000 people, if not more, come January 1st when the moratorium is up, could very well lose their homes, greatly exacerbating the current crisis that we're in. That being said, I don't think rent control is the only answer, though it is one of the answers. And we have seen our current city council expand renters' protections greatly throughout the last year to ensure that renters are not evicted if they have not been able to pay rent during the current crisis, ensuring that we do not have school year evictions and protecting families during that time, and providing cash assistance supports. I really think that a part of this is going to be utilizing things like the American Rescue Plan dollars from Jumpstart and other areas of our budget to continue to increase the amount of money that we can give to direct cash assistance to keep people in their homes until we do that very important work of ensuring rent control is an option that we have in our suite of protections for tenants. We have seen commercial rent control be a very effective mechanism in protecting small businesses and being able to stay in their brick and mortar. We know the value of land, and speaking very specifically to our Black and Brown communities, knowing that you will not lose your land, lose your business, or lose your home is incredibly important to creating stability and addressing things like the racial wealth gap. So absolutely, I will be your partner in addressing that as a part of our toolkit for keeping us from ever being in these crises again.
You have 30 seconds if you'd like to use it, or would you like to forfeit it?
I'm happy moving on to Sarah. Thank you so much.
Okay, same question.
We're kind of talked out.
Candidate Nelson, do you need the question repeated?
Do I support rent control?
Or are you good? Or do you
I'm good.
Okay, let's roll.
So I campaigned for the statewide income tax because Seattle is a very regressive tax structure, and that lost. But I think that we need to bring something like that back, and I would support perhaps a statewide rent control. But I'm concerned about Seattle-only taxes because it creates a patchwork of legislation that is difficult to administer, and it has different impacts on Seattle. And so I think that a better way of helping renters is right now in this crisis, direct cash payments to renters, and that will help them stay in their homes, and it'll also help our small landlords. You know, small landlords rent to 65% of the people in this city. It'll help them hang on to their property, because if they go out of business and those are redeveloped, they'll be market rate units and large homes that people can't afford. So I am thinking that I'm looking at other cities that have done rent control, and San Francisco, New York, and it helps the people that have apartments right now. but we're a growing city. And it has been shown that rent control inhibits the construction of new units. And so we have got to make sure that we're not inhibiting the construction of new housing for our growing city. And so those are the things that I would have to weigh if this proposal came forward, but I have not seen enough evidence to show that rent control is the best way to go about addressing our housing affordability crisis.
15 seconds. You want to forfeit that 15 seconds?
Sure.
All right, we'll go to our next moderator, Jermaine Miller. Jermaine, your question will initially be directed to candidate Nelson, and you'll have 2 minutes.
How you doing today?
Hi.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna kind of piggyback off Matt. Cost of living goes up literally every single month. Wages don't. I'm a renter. I'm a small business operator. What steps can you help us to take to keep our wages competitive with the cost of living that's going up daily?
2 minutes, candidate Nelson.
Sure. I supported the $15 an hour minimum wage in Seattle, and I think it might be time to revisit that. You know, and I also think that it's important for small employers to offer more than just, you know, by law what's required in terms of wages. I think that that offering the benefits like healthcare and paid family leave, subsidized Orca card, retirement plans. These are things that workers need in addition to a paycheck, because no matter how much we raise the minimum wage, it's probably not enough to get by in a city, because there are all these other expenses that workers and their families need. And that's what Fremont and Brewing does, is offer those benefits. We need to figure out a way how to push small businesses in the private sector to take on that responsibility of going above and beyond for their workers.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate this question, because we talk a lot about the racial wealth gap. But we don't necessarily talk about the ways in which not having access to a prevailing wage, or even as a small business, not having access to the capital to provide your workers with a prevailing wage, is a part of the obstacle to addressing that wealth gap. We know that a white-owned business is valued at 12 times the value of a Black-owned business in our region. And so as City Council, I think it's important that we start putting things in place to support businesses and being able to thrive. So one of those is really thinking deeply again about expanding commercial rent control to not simply exist during this crisis of the pandemic, but making sure that it stays in place so that small business owners know they can remain in their brick and mortar. I think the next step is developing incubation models that are connected to our zoning plans that push developers to have smaller build outs of buildings on the first floor of those buildings, so that small businesses know that there will be affordable spaces for them to move into. The less a small business is spending on space, the more that they can invest in their workers. And I also think that our city needs to be investing in a behavioral health system of our own, leveraging one of our 7 progressive revenue options so that workers have access to healthcare options that don't have to be dependent upon employment. Healthcare for all has to be one of our priorities at the state, county, and city level, and also at the federal level. And anything the city can do to take the burden off of workers, but also small businesses, and ensure that people have access to healthcare networks is going to be a really important part of keeping people healthy and supporting prevailing wages. And at the city level, we do a lot of contracting with small businesses and nonprofits. And so we need to use the power of the purse. When we contract for development or we contract for services, ensuring that instead of awarding the smallest contract so we can save money, we award at the highest levels, telling businesses, telling social service providers that they have to give their workers not just a prevailing wage, but a living wage. We know that to live effectively in the city of Seattle, you need nearly $25 an hour in order to support a single individual. Imagine if you have a family of 4. So having prevailing wage jobs, setting the example, starts at the city level.
Thank you. Mac, you are up again, and your question shall initially be directed towards candidate Oliver. And before you do that, do some shameless self-promotion and remind everyone that they're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is our community election connection debates. We have probably done about 40 of these over the last 2 election seasons, and we're happy to bring you information to give you perspective on how you'd like to use your all-important vote. That's what this is about. Your vote matters. Issues that concern and impact and affect you. And once again, a big thanks to Converge Media and also South Seattle Emerald. Mac, you're up, and candidate Oliver will receive the question.
Thank you, Tony. We have many minority-owned businesses in the city of Seattle, and especially in the South End. And we also have some empty storefronts right now from some businesses that lost their business during the stress of the pandemic. I would like to ask you specifically what you will do to support minority businesses and to bring business to the South End of Seattle.
Candidate Oliver, 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I started out in the last question of talking about how we know that a Black-owned business is valued 12 times less than a white-owned business. That racial wealth gap is also attached to our history of redlining and exclusionary zoning and a lack of access to land and property. So one of the biggest things that we can do is ensure that businesses have pipelines into having storefronts. When we do development in the South End, which has experienced some of the most upzones with the least amount of community benefits, requiring that those community benefits actually have smaller storefronts on the first floor that is connected to hopefully an incubation model that supports micro businesses and having access to capital, loans, technical support, all of the things that you need to build a thriving business. And then having a pipeline that the city of Seattle is effectively providing as we're building more housing and more units and more storefronts that directly moves those micro businesses as they grow and become thriving businesses into storefronts if that's what they want. I think it's also important to understand that we all don't grow up in a space where we have access to banks or technical knowledge or businesses. And many of us who have grown up in communities like the Rainier Beach neighborhood, we are incredibly innovative and have a lot of brilliance and energy to offer. How can we be building, one, on what we've learned about surviving in a city that, to be quite frank, was not built for us, but two, be providing access to the technical supports that communities that may have grown up with that access already had, and prioritize that through offices like the Office of Economic Development. In those same offices, we have dollars that folks can access for building out buildings, for establishing models like Fire Station 6 or Black Dot that we have in the Central District, and ensuring that we provide technical support to apply for those dollars. One of the greatest challenges that I think we face is not even always knowing where to find the application, how to file the application, and what information to include. So the more technical support we can provide, the easier it will be for people to access, and doing that in multiple languages and culturally responsive ways.
Candidate Nelson, did you need the question repeated?
Yeah.
We have many minority-owned businesses in South Seattle, and we also have some empty storefronts from businesses that lost their way during the pandemic, of course, the stress of the pandemic. What will you do to help drive businesses to South Seattle and to support minority-owned business?
2 minutes.
Well, I've thought a lot about this. I mean, I know how hard it is to start and grow a business in Seattle. And yes, I have the advantage of a home that I can put up for collateral. And having worked in the city, I understand the different incentive programs that that a small business owner can access to help start. But when I'm talking to Black business owners in Seattle, I hear things like, my loan was not accepted because I didn't have enough documentation. And that is an expression of the racism that Black business owners face. That's what I was hearing from Theo Martin, who's the owner of Island Soul. You know, he had to go from bank to bank to bank and have an accountant help him get all the information up front. That is discriminatory, and that needs to change. Another problem is access to low interest loans. It's really hard to do that if you don't have an airtight business plan, but a lot of folks need technical support to build a business plan. We need to provide more of that, or partner with our business schools and get students to help these burgeoning business owners to figure out how to do it from the get-go. And when you talk about displacement of businesses, the small storefronts, what's going on right now is that developers are coming in and they're buying 3 or 4 storefronts and making a big project, mixed use, oftentimes housing on top and retail on the bottom. Well, that space is too big now. And so there needs to be flexibility in the building code so that small businesses can move in. Flexibility, like where do you put the wall? Where can you put the plumbing? We need to start with yes and figure out what are the barriers to allowing these small businesses that were displaced to come back and to invite new small businesses to come in. And so I've thought a lot about this, and frankly, some of the things I'm hearing from minority-owned businesses in the South End are the same that I'm hearing from everyone. I want someone to stop robbing my business and throwing rocks from my business through my windows. So we have to focus on that as well.
And the next question will be from Jermaine Miller. And that question will initially be directed towards candidate Nelson. Okay.
We're having a lot of issues with school right now, from protocol to scheduling to getting the kids to school on the buses. So my question is, what does basic education look like for us moving forward with the pandemic being projected to go past 2023, possibly into 2025?
2 minutes.
So hopefully our goal should be that all the kids are in school and they stay in school. That's going to require vaccinations of everyone, and the city can help fund the renovation of some schools so that they have the proper ventilation. I know that the school district has a capital levy coming up, and that can help. But we need to partner with the schools. But here's the thing: we need the ability for every child to be able to attend school from home if necessary. That means municipal broadband. That means tutors to help kids that can't really figure out how to be online from a computer at home that is hopefully given to every family. So the city can play a big role in making sure that there is equity, so that if we have to have kids learning from home again or still, that we do everything we can to make that possible. And when it comes to the hours that kids are in school, there's a big problem because parents last year had to drop their kids off and pick them up at Seattle Public Schools after just 2 hours. That's a huge burden on parents that have to work. So figuring out how to provide for help getting kids to school, or funding tutors to make sure that they are able to learn from home. It's a big mess because these are two different jurisdictions. And if I were the boss of schools, I would have a lot of ideas there. But I think that where the city can really help is definitely on broadband, access to technology, and help with childcare before and after schools.
You have 18 seconds left. Do you want to forfeit the time, or you want to use the time?
Mostly, I think that the city should have a plan. We can't be just going from the report from public health on what the numbers are right now and then having schools stop and open, et cetera. We need to have a plan for every single contingency.
Candidate Oliver, would you like the question repeated?
No, I'm great. Thank you so much. So I'm an educator. I've worked in many of our Seattle Public Schools off and on for nearly 17 years. Started at Graham Hill Elementary School, Aki-Kurosi Middle School, Rainier Beach High School, Cleveland High School, Franklin High School, Garfield High School, Chief Sealth High School. So I have been in our schools, and just want to first shout out our educators, our young people, our families for the work that you're doing. First and foremost, I think municipal broadband has been shown to be one of the most important things we could do post this pandemic. A lack of access to broadband has really caused a lot of young people to miss out on an opportunity, not just to learn, but to connect with their peers and to connect with people who add to their social growth. Secondly, I think continuing to expand funding to the Department of Education and Early Learning within our city. When we look at what departments get cut first, it is often education, it is often parks, it is often libraries. And so as a city, if we're really committed to seeing our young people thrive, that means that those are the last places to receive cuts and the first to receive additional funding. We need to ensure that every school through the Department of Education and Early Learning can apply for funding to have access to a family support worker. That is one of the great challenges that families are facing, is navigating cash assistance for rent, access to food. And school is a place where our young people are 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, and a perfect place to build community schools. And Seattle can support Seattle Public Schools in doing that. Thirdly, really thinking about a real public health strategy. There are schools that do not have a nurse in their building. And while we're in the midst of this public health crisis, we should be providing funding in support of the school district to ensure that every young person has access to a nurse at their school. We can do this in partnership with King County. But again, this is why I think that we should be leveraging some of our own progressive revenue options to build out things like a behavioral health system that can be accessed by young people, their families, and their schools when they need it. Many young people are struggling with their mental health in the school buildings, is what I've heard from educators.
5 seconds.
And I'm excited to be endorsed by our Seattle Education Association because I am the candidate most committed to education in our city.
All right, thank you, candidates. I'm going to give you some time to breathe right now. So you'll get about 2-3 minutes.
Commercial break.
It's a commercial break, but it's kind of a live commercial break. I do want to take this opportunity, though, once again to thank South Seattle Emerald and Converge Media. And we'll be back in about 45 seconds, but the commercials won't end there, so don't go anywhere.
King County Elections has mailed your ballot and it's on its way to you. The future of our cities and King County as a whole will literally be in your hands. From council members to mayors to school board directors and port commissioners, the people who will craft policies and laws that will guide our region are on the ballot. Wherever your passions lie, be it social justice to the environment, housing, homelessness, business, education, and of course, COVID recovery, who is elected will impact these issues. Many races this year are expected to be very close. Your vote very well might make that difference. Your vote is your voice. Make sure your voice is heard. Get up, get out, go vote. No excuses.
Oh, I'm just looking at Converge Studio, and it is amazing to see the space here. And so happy to be here. It's not open yet, but to the public yet, but it will be shortly. And yeah, I wish I could just kind of give y'all a tour of what was going on here. Anyway, welcome back. It's me, Tony B. You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. These are our community election debates. I remind you that next Wednesday, we'll be debating with King County for the King County executive position. It'll be candidate Constantine and candidate Wynn will be here. We've also, I want to say what's up to Cleveland High School, are working on a special project as well for this political season. And we're going to present that to you. And we've worked with several different schools as well. There'll be some debates that you hear that will actually be hosted by teens in our internship program. So I'm just again going to tell you a little bit more about Rainier Avenue Radio.world. If you like what you're seeing now, if you want to go check out our programming, again, you're going to find a variety of diverse programming. You'll hear talk shows, you'll hear music, and I mean all kinds of music. You'll hear alternative language programming. I mean, Tagalog, Spanish, Vietnamese. Of course, we do sports. We do all kinds of music shows like Fresh Juice, shows like Lidline Sports, Clean Greens Living. The diversity of what we do is not something that we planned. It is simply a reflection of our community. And so if you're saying, well, how could you have all these different things in one place? That's the joint we live in, South Seattle. That's how we literally get down. So again, check it out. Right now, we're going to kind of fast track things a little bit, and there will be 1 minute. And I explained that there were going to be 2 wild cards here. One of them was going to be, I was going to ask a question. And so I am. I'm going to ask a question. Here's the thing. You should be able to ask questions of the people who are running for office. You should. It's your vote. Ultimately, they work for you. I think it's 6 figures. And if you want to talk to your elected official, you should be able to. And you should especially be able to talk to them when they're asking for your vote. So I know everybody's not going to get a chance to do that, but a lot of people have different questions. So I'm going to ask mine. And then we'll go back to our moderators. And so here's my question to both of you. I'm Black. It is a very nuanced thing that I have experienced all of my life. I didn't ask to be born Black. I just got lucky. It's just been an amazing experience for me. Obviously, there have been ups and downs and trials and tribulations, but I enjoy every minute of it. I'm not sure yet who I would like to vote for. So you have 1 minute to answer this question, which for me is very personal. As a Black person, why should I vote for you? And the first question goes to candidate Oliver. As a Black person, why should I vote for you?
Well, I'll start first by saying I'm Black too, so glad to be in the club. And I think because I have a sense of urgency about the issues facing Black communities. I, like so many Black people, am tired of hearing about incremental change, or maybe we will eventually address the root causes of the racial wealth gap, or maybe eventually we will address the legacy of redlining, exclusionary zoning, and weed and seed. But these are legacies that also impact my life, will impact my future children's life, impact the lives of the Black children that I work with now. And so I do think having a sense of urgency and a lived experience around both the beauty and the challenges created by society for Black people is important. I also have the in-community relationships. I didn't have to go to the Central District for an event to understand gun violence. I have been to young people's funerals. I work alongside those young people and have been
10
doing
seconds.
restorative justice work for a very long time alongside Coach Dominique Davis, Sean Good, and many others. And so my sense of urgency, because this is also my Black
And
life,
time.
is a reason I think you should vote for me.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson, same question. It may seem obvious, it may not. I know that we are not one monolithic group of people. And a lot of times it is the perceptions of others that drive us. And so, again, I'm just asking, I'm Black. Why should I vote for you? I'm Black. Why should I vote for you? That's important to me to know.
I think it comes down to who you would think is the best candidate to actually get things done to help you and your community. And like I mentioned before, I do have experience in public policy. I know that it's messy. You don't start with an agenda. You start with some humility and talking to people and paying attention to detail. And that's what I will do. And I think that my experience in creating jobs and helping other businesses do the same. And you know, we've got a collaborative with a Black-owned brewery in California to raise their visibility, generate $60,000, and then provide it to the Black is Beautiful project. That's a national project. So when it comes to what's going to really help the Black community, it is opportunities to create generational wealth, foreclosure prevention. These are policies that I think I can advance.
Time.
Yep.
Okay, and here comes this other wild card that comes in that I warned you about in advance. Candidate Oliver, you will have 30 seconds. If you choose to, you can decline to ask a question directly of your candidate, and your candidate will get 30 seconds to respond. Would you like to take advantage of that opportunity?
Absolutely.
Okay, 30 seconds.
Sarah, in many ways, you have been a bit of the law and order candidate. You have called for people who you say are living in parks to be removed because they shouldn't be there. You've called for those who have maybe stolen food or clothes because they're trying to survive to be prosecuted for misdemeanors. But you yourself have eco blocks blocking the street in front of your own brewery, which is a violation of the law. You don't have a permit for it. Why is it that those folks should be prosecuted and your own law violation should be accepted?
30 seconds, Candidate Nelson.
I would not phrase myself as a law and order. I'm a public safety person. And when I talk about misdemeanors, those misdemeanors are not small crimes, and especially when they are repeated over and over again. And this is what I was hearing from our Lodge Cinema co-owner, you know, broken into twice. And so when it comes to the eco blocks,
and time.
every single.
And Candidate Nelson, you have 30 seconds to ask a question of Candidate Oliver. If you would like to, would you like to take advantage of the opportunity to do this?
Sure.
Okay.
You have called yourself an abolitionist, and you want to defund the police by 50% next year. That's the budget you're calling for. You have tweeted that want to end violence and poverty. But what are you going to do to keep people safe? What is your plan when people need to call the police if someone's breaking into their home?
Candidate Oliver, 30 seconds.
Yeah, so in 30 seconds, in 2021, we found that 3 years of 911 data from Seattle Police Department said that 49% of calls that come into 911 could receive a non-sworn, non-police officer response. And so based in the data that 50% of calls coming into 911 actually need to receive something like a mental health provider or a de-escalator or a community-based response. It's actually data-based and data-driven to move 50% of our public safety budget into those alternative responses.
Thank you. You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.World. It's me, Tony B. I am your host of the Community Election Connection Debates. We're going to take it back to Mac now. This round will be, oh, we didn't get the response. Whoa, let me slow down. I apologize. Response, please.
All right.
To the question?
Yes.
I did respond.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
But
we
do-
went
so
back and
you're
forth.
saying that-
okay, we're
Yeah,
good.
I thought so.
Okay, okay.
All right.
I'm happy to
There's no
respond. I couldn't
response, no
elaborate.
response.
What we were missing.
I just wanted to make sure. I want to make. Okay, then we're back on track.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, Matt, you get the first question. This is the 1 minute round. And so hopefully you had the 2 minutes, you took advantage of it. Now it's going to be a little quicker. I hope you don't have to talk in sound bites, but this will be the 1 minute round. Mac, your question will be first, and your question will initially be directed toward candidate Nelson.
Okay. As you all know, I'm a gender educator and activist. And Seattle's narrative is that it's a progressive city, and yet there's a huge gender pay gap, even within city employees in Seattle. What will you do to close the gender pay gap, which affects not only women, but also gender fluid and transgender folks?
Candidate Nelson, 1 minute.
Well, it's not just making sure that there is equal pay for equal work, but there has got to be a plan for elevating women and gender fluid individuals to levels of management. Because simply just doing a survey and finding out if so-and-so in the same job is being paid by the same, for the same amount, that doesn't really help make sure that people are elevated into positions of power in city government and in businesses in the private sector.
You have 30 seconds left.
So, and I also think that it also starts with making sure that we have an education system that is creating the pipeline for people to actually access these jobs, because there are good boys clubs that where connections make all the difference when it comes to getting a job, either in
5
the city
seconds.
or in private sectors. So we have to create equal access to opportunity.
Candidate Oliver, do you need the question? Would you like the question repeated?
No, thank you. I want to first start by thanking the silence breakers for bringing attention not just to the gender pay gap in the city, but the many cultural ways in which women, gender non-conforming folks, and trans folks within our city are experiencing, honestly, systemic violence within our city. And so thankful to Protect 17 for aligning themselves with those workers, and happy to be endorsed by that particular union. We need to do work on raising wages. If we know there's a gender pay gap, raise the wages now. That doesn't need to be a discussion. The second part of this is changing the culture of the city of Seattle. We know that Black women are currently suing the city of Seattle for a lack of access to promotions and opportunity. And so we need to be creating pathways specifically for women, specifically for Black women, to be able to move up into leadership within the organization. And representation in and of itself is not inherently transformation. So fully investing in our race and social justice initiative, ensuring
5
that there are
seconds.
workers in those departments who have the capacity and the funding to utilize those toolkits to make sure that
And time.
our workforce is representing who we want it to.
And Mac has requested a follow-up. So Mac, your initial follow-up will be, these will be 30 seconds to the candidates. And go ahead. You're initially directed towards candidate Nelson.
Yeah, I would like to ask each of you if you think the city should set the example for closing the gender pay gap.
Candidate Nelson, 30 seconds.
Absolutely. There were a couple bills in Olympia, and there was a lot. It was Democrat versus Democrat on how on the specifics of that, because the devil is really in the details. So we should take the lead, but we need to make sure that that how are we measuring equal pay? Because if a woman has been out of the workforce or a man
7
to
seconds.
take care of a family member, then they're being held back in their career promotions. So
And
we
time. And candidate Oliver, do you need the follow-up question repeated?
No, without question, absolutely. The city should be setting the example, and it starts by simply raising the wages. And so we are currently in our budgeting cycle, and the city of Seattle could be considering that as we give resources to budgets. But again, I think fully investing in our race and social justice initiative and ensuring that those who are doing the toolkits in those departments have all of the resources they need to do it. And then when
7
they provide
seconds.
us with the data about what needs to change or shift, rather than simply seeing that and saying, maybe we should go to Olympia and address it, we address it at
Time.
home.
Jermaine, next question is from you, and it will initially be directed towards candidate Oliver, and 1 minute will be the response time.
Awesome. Okay, I got a healthcare question. What is your view on racism and classism regarding our healthcare system, and what do you think needs to be done in that area?
1 minute.
It exists. My father passed in December of 2020, and he was the victim of medical racism. He was a dialysis patient who rarely had his health concerns taken seriously by medical professionals as a Black man in Indiana. I think that we need to be setting standards where people can file complaints to the Office of Civil Rights, ensuring that we have the capacity to actually fund investigators, and then really thinking through how do we as a city invest in healthcare for all. I think one way that this begins is through behavioral health supports. It is very challenging as a Black queer person to find a behavioral health therapist who understands what it means to exists at the intersections that I do. And so building out a behavioral health system that has a race and social justice initiative is one way that we can start. The second is really supporting our healthcare workers. At Cascade Behavioral Health, Black and immigrant women are protesting because they have not received the supports that they need. And the city needs to be backing them up, or at hospitals here,
And
backing
time.
up workers demanding prevailing wages.
Candidate Nelson, would you like the question repeated?
Yes, absolutely. Racism exists in healthcare, and people are dying at disproportionate levels because of it. Quite frankly, just the maternal mortality for Black mothers is one very stark example. But the city should be a provider of universal health care, because the barriers for good health care for Black and brown people are varied. First of all, if you don't have a job, then it's hard to get in for, no insurance. You can belong to the exchange, but that is very expensive. So there are so many barriers. So we need to have a citywide universal healthcare system to fill the gap in the Obamacare system, in the Washington Healthcare Exchange. We can leverage our family and education dollars to fund the health clinics in high schools, and then again, it's all about childcare, because prenatal care and immediate postnatal care is important.
All right, Mac, it's on you. This next question should initially be directed towards candidate Nelson. And candidate Nelson, you'll have 1 minute.
Thank you. We have a citizen police commission. What I would like to ask you is, we all know that Seattle Police Department has had problems with use of force, and they have been, under scrutiny for that. How much citizen oversight input do you think do you feel is a good way to help change the policing in Seattle? How much do you feel that they should have? How much power do you feel like they should have over the police union, for instance, who defends officers who have had multiple use of force infractions?
Candidate Nelson.
You mentioned the Community Police Commission, and they brought forward 268 items that were incorporated into the 2017 police accountability legislation ordinance, and only 32% have been fully or even partially implemented. So we start there, and making sure that those community-driven items are met and are tied to the renegotiation of the SPOG contract. There does need to be more civilian oversight in OPA. That's absolutely clear. The best way for a better civilian oversight is to eliminate arbitration altogether. And that has to happen at the state level. Council had an opportunity to support Senate Bill 5134, but they did not support it. That would have made the strongest improvement in police accountability.
Candidate Oliver, 60 seconds.
So I think a major problem with what has been happening is the Community Police Commission has no authority. They can only make recommendations. So first, ensuring that commissions actually have real authority to effectuate change. The second part of this is, I don't think any amount of accountability legislation should be connected to the collective bargaining agreement. SPOG should have no opportunity to negotiate the rights or the protections of citizens and residents when it comes to being able to move through this city free of excessive use of force or racial disproportionality in policing. And I know know that that will be a big uphill fight, but I've been endorsed by the MLK Labor Council, who in 2020 kicked the Seattle Police Officers Guild out of their affiliate because they recognize that issues of accountability should not be negotiated away through a contract. And I am confident that we have community support to make sure that in this next negotiation, we can find ways to ensure that in community is included at the table, that the 2017 accountability legislation is fully implemented, and that accountability is not something that is a part of that collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you. Jermaine, welcome back.
Welcome back.
And your question will be directed initially to candidate Oliver.
Okay. So initially I was going to ask another question, but since you brought up accountability, I'm going to keep it here. I have been hearing the word accountability being used a lot. When you get in office, what would accountability look like for you and your team as far as responsibility to the people?
Absolutely.
1 minute.
I think what's important is I show up in community. I've been in community. I'm not fresh, especially to our most marginalized and vulnerable communities. I think the way you campaign is emblematic of the way that you will be a part of this governing system. Our campaign has done community listening posts that instead of me, the person running for office, developing the policy, the communities that are most impacted by our policies are actually determining what will change our material conditions. And those are the policies that I bring from my office. Secondly, I have not said no to any engagement. I showed up at Real Change. I showed up at Africa Town last night. I will show up at every forum, every space I'm invited to, whether it's friendly or welcoming to me or not, because engaging with people in conversation is the place that accountability starts. And lastly, you will see me in community. I may not be able to be everywhere all at once, but I will show up as often as I can, especially in our communities, like our Black and Brown communities, who have been dispossessed by this political system and have experienced the worst parts of its racism.
Candidate Nelson, would you like the question repeated?
Yeah, I want to add on to the reform question before, though, because my opponent does.
Okay, this will count in your time.
Okay, yep.
Okay. Just would you repeat the question one more time?
Oh, yeah.
Please.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, just go. I
Okay.
just want to make sure that the audience knows what's going on.
Okay, basically, what would accountability look like for you when you get in office with you and your staff as far as being accountable to us, the people who vote you in?
Yeah,
Okay, that's the minute question. You can answer however you want to about the other thing too. You're on the clock.
Okay, so to me, accountability is good governance, and that means, first of all, identifying a problem, and then bringing people together, stakeholders, to discuss what is the best fix, and then how are we going to pay for that? And then deciding, is that the best use of our resources? And then giving time for public input and slowing legislation down to really consider. I'm talking about accountability in the legislative process because that's what I'll be doing. I will be advancing legislation and passing laws. And of course, part of that means bringing in all viewpoints. And this council seems to be just listening to the voices of the loudest people in the community. And I've heard that people do not feel included. And so what accountability and how I will model accountability is by seeking, incorporating, and actually getting back to my constituents and showing this is how your money will be spent.
And that's time. You have been listening to the Community Elections Connection live on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. We've been happy to present this to you, and equally as happy to have this powered by Converge Media and South Seattle Emerald. There will be more. As I mentioned before, we'll have a group of students from Cleveland High School who've been doing some work, and we're going to share that with you. We've got some other students who are participating who will be actually moderating a panel discussion. And then next week on Wednesday, we'll have the King County Executive debate with candidate Constantine, Executive Constantine, and then candidate Joe Wynn. So now is the time for final words. And first of all, I would like to thank each of the candidates for being here, for answering the questions, and for running for office. But you have to make a decision now. So this is, I don't know, you might want to call it the final round. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's what decides it. It's your vote. Use it the way you want to. And candidates are going to have 2 minutes now. See if they have anything that you want to say in these last 2 minutes that can help you make a decision. Candidate Oliver, 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, community, for spending an evening with us and being informed voters. I am incredibly honored to be in space with the Emerald, Rainier Avenue Radio, and Converge. Seeing Black media thriving in our city is a powerful thing. I am running for Seattle City Council because we can no longer wait for solutions that are commensurate with the crises we are facing. We have been in a state of emergency around housing since 2015. A racial wealth gap has existed in this city since its inception. Exclusionary zoning, redlining are issues that we can address in our next 2024 comprehensive plan and really begin to make strides, not just to address the housing affordability and homelessness crisis, but to get to the root causes that are driving them, ensuring that people have access to prevailing wages, benefits, and workforce development. As we move into an era of addressing the climate catastrophe and ensuring that our city has a Green New Deal, working with our unions and our labor partners to build out jobs in our green economy, to ensure that everyone has access to an urban tree canopy and have transportation for all so that we can decrease our dependency upon single occupancy vehicles is one of our best efforts to ensure that in 50 years, our young people have a green and thriving Seattle. I am honored to be endorsed by Seattle City Council members Tammy Morales and Teresa Mosqueda, King County Councilmember Girmay Zahalai, State Reps Kirsten Harris-Talley, Jesse Johnson, Tara Simmons, and Senator Saldana, as well as Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Each of these folks and many more have endorsed me because they know I can bring together a broad coalition of people to address the crises facing our city, not just the symptoms, but the root causes of those crises, so that our children and our young people are not fighting the same fights that we are today, and in 2050 are living in a healthier, thriving Seattle that is built to be more inclusive and welcoming for everyone.
Got 7 seconds left.
Thank you so much.
I just let the clock run out on that one. Okay, time. Candidate Nelson, you have 2 minutes.
So you heard that there are things that Nikkita and I agree on. We agree on the main issues and some of the solutions, but our approach is different. And the stakes are high this election, and voters have to make the choice on electing the person who is actually going to get things done. I don't believe that simply cutting the police by 50% because 50% of the calls are don't require a police response is the right way to go. In reality, detectives are being deployed on patrol because we're already short-staffed. And we talk about getting guns off the street. Who is going to be investigating how those guns got there? So we cannot just simply slash budgets without thinking about a public safety plan for the whole city. And again, on issues like homelessness, ignoring people that are living in encampments is not helping, and simply waiting until we have the units that can house everyone is not helping people that are falling deeper into addiction right now. And so I think that the choice is between someone who is going to kind of fall in step with the rhetoric and the ideological, bent and failed policies, or someone who actually has some plans to put in place right now. It's not as maybe lofty as massive getting at the root causes, but these are things that need to be done right now because we're in an emergency and we have to help our most vulnerable. I'm endorsed by Gary Locke and Reuven Carlisle, Gail Tarleton, Richard Conlin, Rasmussen, most of the old guard of City Council, and Culture PAC and Allied Arts. And the diversity of my endorsements is because people think that I'm the best shot at returning Seattle, or at least getting it to a place where we can enjoy a healthy and safe city for everyone.
Time. There you have it. Thank you, Candidate Nelson and Candidate Oliver. Thanks to our moderators, Mac McGregor, also Jermaine Miller. Big thanks to the Big O. My dude, man, I'm so proud of you, Converge Media. I'm loving it. Thank you for partnering with us and helping make this happen. And my dude, Marcus Green, I'm so proud of you too. It's just amazing what's taking place here. So that's about it. That's all the time that I have. I just want to say you can go back like in about 10 minutes and watch this again, and you can share it with a friend who can share it with a friend, and yeah, we can just keep this thing going. Again, the ultimate thing that we're hoping for, I'm not telling you who to vote for. We just want you to make the decision that's right for you in your own personal way. Or if you want to vote as a group or a block, however you want to get down, they were here so that you could be assisted with making your decision. That's it. That's all the time I have for Rainier Avenue Radio. It's me, Tony B, saying, remember, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you are probably right. I'm out. Peace.
King County Elections has mailed your ballot and it's on its way to you. The future of our cities and King County as a whole will literally be in your hands. From council members to mayors to school board directors and port commissioners, the people who will craft policies and laws that will guide our region are on the ballot. Wherever your passions lie, be it social justice to the environment, housing, homelessness, business, education, and of course, COVID recovery, who is elected will impact these issues. Many races this year are expected to be very close. Your vote very well might make that difference. Your vote is your voice. Make sure your voice is heard. Get up, get out, go vote. No excuses.